First example for creating a probability distribution in Sheets for today. So far, this one, we're going to look at the question where we were dealing 13 cards and recording the number of hearts. So this is a question we had seen before in our notes, and I've already done all my formatting, but for you guys are going to format. So if you need to review how to properly format cells and things like that, you might want to go back and rewatch the video for Sheets number 1. If you were able to format before, then hopefully you can do that fine, and you already got a good mark in that section. Hopefully you can just repeat that. But if you were unable to format, or you didn't get kind of the mastery in formatting, the kind of 2 out of 2, then you want to make sure you focus on that a little bit more here, right? Because I'm always going to use most consistent grading type methods. So if you've demonstrated improvement, I can up that kind of section in terms of weighting how you're doing for that. So for this question, again, we're looking at dealing 13 cards for recording the number of hearts. And then we're going to look at the probability for each one. So I've set up a column or a kind of table section here for just how many things I have to start with. So I'm looking at an entire deck of cards. So I have 52 cards that I'm going to have in the entire deck. And the number of hearts in the entire deck, sorry, this says number in the jar. Your example is in a jar. But this one is in a deck. Number of hearts in a deck is 13. The number of non-hearts, I'm actually going to put a function in here. Even though for a deck of cards we don't really change it, but maybe all of a sudden we're talking about a euchre deck. Maybe we're talking about like 3 decks. We still want this to be able to just calculate everything automatically and not have to change very many things. So I'm just going to go total minus the number of hearts, and then enter. So for example, if I change this to 2 decks of cards, but let's just say I change this to 60 cards, but still only 13 hearts, that number automatically changed. But why would we have 60 cards? I don't know. The number we're picking, it says we're dealing 13 cards. So my total is going to be 13. It's always going to be 13. So I'm actually just going to make every single one of these cells equal to the one above it. And by doing that way, again, if I change this and all of a sudden I'm now picking 15 cards, all of those changed. Okay. So the number of hearts possible. Well, I could get 0, or 1, or 2. Once I get a couple in a row there, it'll be able to fill that pattern down. So if I just select the ones I've got and go to the corner where my cursor changes, so it's an arrow and now it's a plus, and then I drag it down, it's going to just fill that all the way down. Okay? The number of non-hearts that I actually pick, well, that's however many cards I still have left to pick, right? So in this case, it's going to be 13 minus 0, which equals 13. Now there's this new function, or this new feature, I guess, not a function, where it will actually offer to autofill for you, which is pretty awesome. So I just noticed this today. So if it autofills, just double check and see if that actually makes sense for what it's filling in. So to me, that makes sense. This should be decreasing by 1 every single time. So I'm going to click yes. I'm just going to double check. So I'm going to click on the yellow one and just make sure it's doing what I want. So it's doing orange, which is this one, minus purpley, which is that one. That's exactly what I want, so it's working perfectly. Okay, I've highlighted that cell in yellow because you'll see in the version that I'm going to share with you, you're not actually going to be able to click on each cell because I don't want you just copying and pasting my particular formulas. But I will be just typing out the formula beside it so you can read it and work with it that way. Okay, any of these cells that are in color, I'm going to give you my formula for that particular cell in a PDF version or like an online version that you can't actually just copy and paste from. Okay, so now to calculate the probability. This is where the tricky part comes in, right? In order to calculate probability, this is a hypergeometric example. It's hypergeometric because I know the number of hearts and non-hearts, so I know the number of my population. I know how many I'm picking. It's dependent because once I get one card, I'm not putting it back in, so the probability of me getting more hearts, if I've already got some hearts, is less because there's less hearts left in the deck. And my random variable is the number of one particular outcome, and there's only 2 particular outcomes for each card. It's either a heart or it's not a heart. I don't care what it is. I just care that it's a heart or not a heart. Okay. So for calculating probability for hypergeometric, we need to use combinations. So we need to find how many ways I can get what I want. In this case, what I want is 0 hearts and 13 not hearts. So let's first look at how many ways can I get a set of 0 hearts. That's 13, choose 0. So 13, choose 0. So if I want to try and figure out that function, I might guess choose. So I might start typing choose. And it says an element from a list of choices based on index. That's not what I want. Okay. So the fancy word is combinatorics or combinations. So when I type com, I see combin, number of combinations from a set of objects. That makes sense. I'm going to select that one. Okay. And then I want to put in, just like I would write C bracket number comma bracket n comma r, we're going to do the same thing here. How many do I have and how many do I want to pick? Well, I've got 13 in total and I want to pick 0. So again, I'm highlighting on this orange cell up top for 13 and this kind of, I don't know, paley purple color with the 0, C9. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is, it's an AND situation, so I'm going to multiply that by picking my number of non-hearts. So again, combin. Non-hearts is 41. Choose 13. Close my bracket. Okay. Then I want to divide that by total number of ways for me to pick any 13 cards. So that's again going to be another combinations. And it's going to be my total number of cards. Oh, now I have my total number of cards as 54. For some reason, I decided to count jokers. That's not right. Remember we talked about we're going to assume we never include jokers. So I'm going to correct that afterwards, but I can keep making this because, again, the glory of using spreadsheets is when I change that 50 to 52, everything else is going to change. So don't worry about that for now. But it's 54 is what I have, or at least this cell, comma, choose 13. So that's now my probability. Now, I don't want that to be 54, though I want that to be 52. There we go. Everything got fixed. That non-hearts now is 39, which is the appropriate number of non-hearts. 3 suits times 13, 39. Awesome. Okay. I've also formatted all of this row here, and I just told it to display in percent, format as percent. That just makes it kind of easier to think about. Okay. Now, in order to calculate all the rest of them, I don't want to type that combination thing again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, fill that down. It didn't give me an offer this time, so I have to do it myself. So I'm going to select, again, when I move my cursor, it changes to a plus sign. Right there. Click and hold and drag down. And now you'll see I get some errors. Well, that's not good. We don't want errors. Okay, let's try and figure out why we're getting an error. If I double click on it, I can track through where it's looking. So this C7 in yellow, that's linking right there. There's no number in there. So that's why that's not working. I want it to be referencing up here, but it's shifted down. I don't want it to shift down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just escape out of here. And then I'm going to fix this formula up here by locking in this C9. I don't want that to shift. Remember again, to lock in, you're going through and you are putting a $sign in front of, in this case, the row number, because I don't want it to shift up or down. Okay? Then it says choose C9. That's this one, the 13. I still want that, so that's good. That stays. My next combination is this teal color, D6. That's the number of non-hearts. I don't want that to shift, the total number of non-hearts. So that's going to stay. Then in the bottom, B6, that's also going to stay. Basically anything in this row, which is row 6, I don't want to shift. So where I saw 6, I put a $sign in front of it. Okay. Now if I fill down, hopefully she works. There we go. So you can see down here, that one was already built in, but what I did was I just typed sum of, and then I just selected all of those, and it highlighted it all for me. Okay, so that now set up my probability distribution table. If I want to make a graph based on that, well, let's highlight what I want to graph. So I want to graph, let's say I want to graph the number of hearts versus the probability. I'm just going to select all of that. It's going to include non-hearts, but that's okay. We can get rid of it after. So I'm going to go Insert, Chart, Again, you can see that it made two different graphs, and I don't really like that. So I've selected the right range there. I'm just going to move it over to the side a little bit more so I can maybe move it down here. I want my x-axis to actually be the number of hearts. So I'm going to go like that. That makes more sense. That goes from 0 to 13. That's good. My series, that's kind of what they call the y-axis. That, I just want to be my probability. So I don't want hearts to be there. I don't want non-hearts to be there. I just want the probability. Oops. There we go. All right, then we got to start adding some titles. So you just go to Customize, Chart Axis and Title. Your title, again, for any of these types of things is going to be probability, distribution of, in this case, it's number of hearts in your hand. Or number of hearts dealt. It's a little bit faster way to type it. Okay. Then you can go to your horizontal axis. That's number of hearts dealt again. Vertical axis, that's your percentages, so that's your probability. Okay. Now again, we can start playing around with this. Let's say we changed decks, and this new fancy deck of cards doesn't have 13 hearts in it. Let's say it only had 10 hearts. I can just change that to 10. All the other numbers automatically changed. Right? You'll notice you get some errors down here because it's trying to do 10, choose 11, right? There's not enough hearts there to fill that in. So that's not probable, so it doesn't make sense. But that's okay. Let's go back to 13 and just leave it, because next we're going to do expected value. Okay. Actually, just before we do expected value, looking at this distribution, you can talk about kind of the symmetry and the asymmetry as well. It looks fairly symmetric. But what I actually want to show you is, see how it goes all the way to 13? We don't see any bars there. And see how it just looks like it's 0 down here? Let's actually increase the number of decimal places we can show there. We had to go quite far until we started seeing these, but so those aren't 0. They're really, really close to 0. And if we keep increasing, I'm not sure how far we'd have to go to get, there we go. We'd have to go pretty far to get that all 13 hearts to be dealt. That's very, very unlikely. But since these aren't actually 0, there's actually a very small tail that comes out from 9 to 13. Okay, so that's actually asymmetric. So just kind of keep that in mind, that sometimes you have bars that you can't actually see because they're so small. Even if I make this bigger, like the 8 popped up there. We didn't really see the 8 before. But you're not going to get there so you can actually see the 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 because they're so small. Right? You have to make that really, really large in order to see that. But it is, in fact, there. There is a probability. It's non-zero. Whereas me getting -1, -2 hearts, that doesn't make any sense. So that is 0. So that makes it an asymmetric probability distribution. And it ends up actually being positively skewed. Because, again, the skew is in the direction of the tail. It's in the direction of the really low probabilities. Okay, so expected value is equal to, for a hypergeometric distribution, it's the probability of me getting a heart when I just pick one card. So that's going to be 13 out of, so divided by 52. That's probability of me getting a heart on one card times the number of cards we're picking. So that ends up getting 3.25. So that means on average, my 13 card hand is only going to have 3.25 hearts. So if I'm dealt anything more than that, I got a good hand. Right? So if you're playing hearts or spades, which is a very similar game, but spades matters more than anything else, that's kind of your average number that you would expect to get. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay? So what you guys are going to look at when I publish this is actually a version that looks something like this. It's going to have the total column. I just haven't done that yet, but you'll see, again, this one highlighted in green. You won't be able to click and kind of just copy the function exactly because I want you to be typing it in yourself and figuring it out. But I will give you a version of it just to the side. Notice that these has decimals in front in this column here. That's just so it doesn't actually work out the function. So you don't want the decimals because you want it to work out the function. But it'll give you an idea of how I did it so you can reference back. Okay, so yellow cell matches with yellow, pink cell matches with pink, and so on. All right, so your task is to go through and look at a number of marbles in a bag, and you're going to do that. And then underneath, I've actually asked you a series of questions that I want you to answer as well. So there's, I'll reformat this so that I give you some space where you can answer, but make sure you're kind of merging cells together so I can read your entire information. So for just a quick recap on that. So let's say let's say this one here, I want this all to be kind of together, just up to there, and I want to be able to read it. So that's merge cell. But you see, when I merge the cell, it goes B and then it's done. It doesn't quite fit. I just need to make it a little bit bigger. And then I need to wrap. So that's up here, text wrapping. Wrap around. Now I can read everything in that cell. So just kind of keep that in mind that you can do that. Okay? So it asks you to kind of play with some numbers and see how that affects the distribution. All right, so go through and try scenario 1. Rewatch this video, pause it whenever you need to, things like that. And then there's another video for example 2 after this.